warn you, evil one, return to the bottle.
No, Shaitan. It is now your turn.
There's something written here, but it's hard to make out.
Hey! 10,000 years will give you such a crick in the neck.
If you desire to know more about using genies in your next Pathfinder game, then your wish is my command. Let's start with the basics. Genies are outsiders from the elemental plane. They possess fairly robust suites of spell-like abilities. A genie might also be willing to bargain with your party, if the price is right. And genies can typically be summoned with spells like Summon Planar Ally or Summon Monster. Now, as we get into the specific types of genie that the party might interact with, I want to apologize. I'm not very good with foreign words, so if I'm saying these wrong, I apologize. Let's start with the Djinni. These guys hail from the plane of air. Their spell-like abilities allow them to do nifty things, like go invisible at will, and assume a gaseous form. And obviously they can fly. For those interested in summoning Djinni, having an offering of a Tome of Knowledge or a powerful wondrous item will give you a +2 bonus on your charisma checks. Next up we have Efreets. Efreets hail from the plane of fire and are generally fairly tough customers. They have a constant ability to detect magic, they can fire scorching rays whenever they like, and of course they can grant 3 wishes once a day, but only to non-genies. For those interested in bargaining with Efreets, a weapon with a minimum +2 enhancement, or scrolls of 4th level spells or higher will give you a +2 circumstantial bonus on your charisma checks. Also, they're fond of humanoid slaves. For every 10 you give them, you get a +1 bonus on your charisma check. That will give you evil ticks, by the way, I'm fairly sure. Next up we have the Janni. Now, these guys are interesting because they're classified as native outsiders, and they're the most likely to be found on the prime material plane. Unlike the other genie varieties, these guys are comprised of all 4 elements. Also, like the Djinni and the Efreets, they have a fly speed. Their spell-like abilities include invisibility and ethereal jaunt. If your players are seeking to bargain with one of these, gifts of things like silks, gems, or other valuables worth at least 1,000 gold pieces will give them a +2 bonus on their charisma checks. Next up we have the Marid. Marid are genie from the water plane. They don't fly, but they do swim fairly well. They have a swim speed of 60 feet. They're constantly under the effect of Detect Good, Detect Evil, and Detect Magic. They can go invisible, cast Obscuring Mist, and cast Wish without the non-genie stipulation. Marids are fond of the arts, apparently. Players seeking to bargain with them, who offer a piece of artwork, worth at least 1,000 gold, or making a DC 30 perform check, will get a +2 bonus on their charisma checks. Finally, the Shaitan hail from the plane of Earth, and as you would expect, they can burrow. Their spell-like abilities allow them to do things like melt into stone, and transmute mud into rock or rock into mud. Apparently, these guys are fond of games of chance, so they would be willing to engage your players in a contest of some kind, like something as simple as rolling dice. Another RP thing you should be aware of for genies is the fact that the genie varieties have this sort of relationship with one another. Some of them hate each other, some of them can kind of work together, but the various genie varieties have this sort of political alliance, love-hate thing. Most of them don't seem to like the Efreets very much, so that's something to be aware of. When it comes to using genies in combat, it's important to remember that they are intelligent creatures. they're going to do things like using their special movement abilities to their advantage. The flyers are definitely going to fly around to avoid those strong melee party members. Most genies are going to have some type of weapon, either melee or ranged, and in general, they're not really the fight-to-the-death types. So, if your party gets a genie to, say, the bloodied state where it's lost about half its health, it might be willing to make a deal with them for its own survival. Or it may use some of its special transportation abilities, like most of them can cast Planar Shift, to escape, and then possibly return for revenge at some point later in the campaign. With genies, it really pays to think about them as a character instead of just as a hitbot type monster. Alright, I'd like to leave you with a list of sources you can go to get inspiration for how to use genies in your next Pathfinder game. First off, I have to recommend the Arabian Nights. Obviously, the classic story of Aladdin is a great go-to, but I'm also really fond of The Fisherman and the Genie. There's a lot of interesting folklore around King Solomon when it comes to genies. He's said to have had a magic ring which allowed him to control genies, and there's a lot of really cool stuff there. For games, the Witcher quest, The Last Wish, has Geralt dealing with a wily genie. The game Dark Cloud has lots of genies in it. Clavicus Vile, the God of Wishes, in the Elder Scrolls series, is very much kind of a genie-like character in a lot of ways. And Shantae is just a genie. So, yeah. For TV shows, pretty much any TV show with kind of a fantasy element to it tends to dust off genies at some point. There's I Dream of Genie. That's another one. And finally, I have to say that if your party does get to make wishes, remember that there is such a thing as getting more than you bargained for, and I'll leave that up to your creativity to figure out how best to do that. Now, if you're interested in more character builds and strategy guides for Pathfinder and Dungeons & Dragons, check out D6 Damage right here on YouTube. Thank you for watching.